Alright, so, Papa John's just called me and told me my pizza was here, and I didn't order pizza. It sounded good, though. So, last video I made, I was talking about, escaping the Matrix and simulation theory and whatnot. And I just wanted to add to that to clarify some things. Every time I make a video, this is things that I do. I start thinking like, oh, instead of that, I should have said, or I should have added, and you know, I'm sure you know how it is. But see, the Matrix is art. It's a metaphor. It's a bunch of camera tricks, but it's still metaphorical, or allegorical. But, so if you look at the Matrix as the Matrix itself, being inside the Matrix is being in the state of a fallen man, because that's what falls. It was Adam and Eve that got kicked out of the garden. It wasn't the serpent, although the serpent was in the man. Enough. The Matrix is the fallen state. Escaping the Matrix, once you escape, it's a certain type of knowledge, and it's a certain type of programming for your subconscious mind. Your mind is programmed now, maybe not yours, but people's minds are programmed into that fallen state. When someone says something slightly, some innuendo or some sexual reference that isn't intended to be a sexual reference, and someone says, that's what she said, right? That is a immature, worldly, programmed response. And I'm sure that you know dozens of programmed responses. And that is in the Matrix. Okay? When you hear that same reference and you keep your mind still, that little voice in the back of your head, it doesn't say any of that silly shit. That's the escape. It's escaping from that thought pattern, those habits, that world. The world of, that's what she said. That's what the point is. That would make perfect sense to me. I was just speaking in a general sense that believing that the world is a video game is a stupid idea. I believe. You don't have to believe that. I do. I think that it's a terrible idea, and it's kind of boring. It's just evidence that somebody is creatively bankrupt. In your attempt to explain life and the world around you and all the mystery and marvel in it, you chose to say, oh, it must be a video game. It's a giant simulation. It's a bland, programmed, bullshit explanation, and I don't like it. Listen, if somebody says to you, we're in the Matrix, and they mean it, right? If it's a joke, it's a joke. But if they truly believe that the world is a simulation, they probably aren't very good at having serious thought. They tell themselves what sounds fun, and then accept that fun as truth. Wouldn't it be cool if this was a video game? Oh, now that's what I believe because it sounds cool. Whatever. Enough of that. There you go. That was my addition. So what I actually want to talk about is that programming of the subconscious mind, right? Our minds are programmed from the time that we arrive here to the point where we fall, where we actually fall. We no longer are able to perceive the world as the beautiful garden that it is. We start to see it as this mucky, gross, swamp-like, crime-infested, corrupt politician-raising piece of shit planet. Sorry. But that's when the infection starts to get into the subconscious. you get this negative outlook. You have to change that. You choose what your mind is programmed to do. And it is sort of like a computer, right? But that is to say, the computer is more based on the mind and how it functions. The mind is not based on the computer, which was made 30 years ago, while the mind is forever. All of the past, all of the future is mind. The computer is this little sliver of time in that all. It's not a simulation. So when the mind perceives information, right, through hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, seeing, the 5 physical senses. We're not going to count tuition because that's entirely separate. When the mind of the body perceives information through those senses, there are responses that over time are programmed. Repetition is what it is. It's coincidence, I guess. But if you feel the same texture all the time, every time that you react to that texture, you're building programming. So that in 20 years, if you were to feel that texture again, that same program would run. It's the same way with the things that you hear. When you hear these things over and over and over and over again, your mind reacts to them in the exact same way. When you smell, this is one that gets me. There's like this smell of fabric softener or something that sometimes I smell it in the air, and it takes me back to a place. But that's my point, right? So every time I smell this fabric softener, my mind is programmed to remember these certain things, and I enjoy this. Like it's nice to me, so I don't try to change it. But let's say I did want to change it. You have to quiet the mind. Totally still. Only allow it to run these programs when you choose. If you've always seen Teletubbies and every time you've seen it you've just become enraged, I hate these fucking Teletubbies, all you have to do is quiet your mind. Pay attention to it. You can't just shut it up and then go about your business. You have to slow down. Pay attention to it. You have to watch your sheep. Moses sat in the wilderness for 40 years watching his sheep. And then the Lord came to him. You have to watch those sheep. When your mind starts, when you see Teletubbies and the rage starts coming, you have to throw it away, essentially. I like to question it. Why do I feel that way? What is it about these Teletubbies that is making me angry? And then I can work on that myself internally. But when you start feeling that anger for these Teletubbies, throw it away. Don't let that shit take over you. As one brilliant man said, anger and depression are not out there in the world somewhere. And when you want to beat them, you go find them and you hit them. That isn't how it works. You become the anger or the depression. And when you do, the only thoughts that you can have are the thoughts that align with that frequency. Somebody who's angry all the time, they think about hitting people, getting hit by people, taking things, bullying people, yelling at people, angry thoughts. If you're depressed all the time, you think about killing yourself, jumping off a bridge. I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time depressed. I used to have PTSD, no joke, diagnosed and everything. PTSD, depression, anxiety. I refused all medications because I've taken a Xanny or two. They're fucking awful. Terrible, terrible medicines. But I was clinically diagnosed with all of those. I refused the medication. Over time, it was actually, I was diagnosed with those before. I was still an atheist at the time, which is, of course, where they stem from. But even as an atheist, I loved learning, and I wanted to know. And then I came across this information that snapped me out of it. It was really strange, but I love people's awakening stories. What I heard was, it was talking about the Great Northern Cross in space, the constellation, the alignment of stars in the sky that makes up the Great Northern Cross, and how the sun goes to the Great Northern Cross and then lowers. It doesn't lower like that, but it's about a declination across the Great Northern Cross, and that's a descension on the cross. And I was like, oh shit. And then here I am now. But shit, I done went so far off on a tangent. Let's go back to the Teletubbies. So what you have to do is, when you hear this information and you start running these programmed responses that are pure habit, it's just habit. That's everything is just habit. You have to have enough control of your mind to stop that reaction, to not take that download. And then you cancel download and change whatever you want it to be. If you have enough control over your emotions, when you see Teletubbies and you start getting angry, you abort, and then you associate Teletubbies with being incredibly happy. And now every time you see Teletubbies, you're incredibly happy, just like a little child. And that, in probably the simplest terms possible, at least as far as what I can do here, that is how you alter and reprogram the subconscious mind. That's a funny word. Alter means to change, deviate. Okay, so that reminds me of something else I want to talk about before I go. So, William Shakespeare, whether or not you believe that he was Francis Bacon or whatever, that doesn't matter. He wrote that all the world is a stage. And man has 7 acts or some shit like that. And what I want to say is that when he says the world is a stage, he doesn't mean that it's a stage that people go on and they play characters to act out this, chances are it's metaphorical, theater, script, role, whatever. It's stages, as in, how do you say that? It's, so in the first stage, you're going to start off and you're going to be a man of this world. Everybody is. That's what the world does to you. And, which actually, this isn't the first stage. This is like the third stage. The first stage is total purity, but you're also totally helpless, a little baby. And then you're a child. You're still innocent, pure, son of man, son of God. Perfect, spiritually perfect little creature. And then you're going to begin to fall. And then you're going to fall. And then you're going to realize that you fell. And then you're going to start climbing back up. And then you're going to get to the top of the mountain. Those are the stages. All the world is a stage. And those are the stages. At least, I mean, that's what I think he meant. The same way that he said all the world is a stage. And the physical man hears that, right? And he thinks, oh, it's a play. All the world is where you go and you play a role. You're cast for a script. Wordplay. The same way that has two meanings. And the same way that manifest in the flesh has two meanings. That applies to the entire Bible. Okay, maybe not all of it, but most of it has these double meanings. It's really amazing. One time, I was speaking to a prominent isn't the word, but it's the one I'm going to use here. Prominent Indian guy was brilliant, right? And he says to me, Shiva, the destroyer, right? But it's not the destroyer of whatever. Shiva is the destroyer of evil. That helps to know. Of course, the thing is, so people have these programmed responses, right? And when they see Shiva, they see scary, and then fear. And once the fear comes in, you ain't gonna figure shit out, because that's just what fear does. It blinds you. It's goggles. It's blindfold, I should say. But once that fear comes in, you can't understand anything. You're terrified. You're afraid. It's got the Shiva statue outside of CERN, for example. What in the hell would CERN know about Shiva? Absolutely nothing. They do that shit because Shakespeare's statement, all the world is a stage, is true in both senses. It's true in the sense that everything out here in this physical world is a play. It's all theater. Every bit of it. The times of the most intense conflict in human history, one of them, is referred to as the theater war. And that's World War II, America and Japan in the ocean there. That was the theater war. It's political theater, bread and circuses, all these examples. And that's true. It is a show. The problem is people become emotionally and mentally and physically invested into this show. And then when the show ends and your days are done, there's nothing left of you. Because everything that you were, you put into this temporary world. Once it's gone, you're gone with it. But it's also true in the sense that the world is a stage to be beaten, to be overcome internally by you. So, the Shiva statue outside of CERN is part of the former. It's the same reason that if you go to CIA.gov, which I don't even think this video will load now, but if you go to CIA.gov and you go to the very bottom of the page, because you sure as hell can't share the link, and you go to Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. Click it. Page will pop up, and at the top there will be a search bar. Type in that search bar, zombies. Go ahead. You'll see that the CIA has written and published documents talking about a real zombie apocalypse, invasion, whatever it may be. But why? Why does the CIA have documents on fictional creatures as if it was a real thing? Because they know you want to read it. Not you, I'm sorry. Because they know people love that fear, sci-fi fear bullshit. People love zombies. And so what does the CIA do? They give them a reason to associate themselves with the government and entertainment, to keep you attracted to this outside world, to this theater, to this stage, so that you never beat the stage in here. That's why they'll give you Um, Zombies, aliens, reptilians, QAnon, all those things. If you want to see a zombie, you can see them. Because it's again, it's allegory, it's metaphor, personification, illusion, repetition, onomatopoeia. That one's not in there, I'm just kidding. That's formation of a word by imitation of sound, like kaboom, bang, pop. You're making a word by vocalizing the sound. Right. So these zombies, they walk down the street. You can see them everywhere. They got a muzzle because they're not gonna talk. They're zombies. They gave their voice up. And they're usually staring at their hand. Like this. Those are the zombies. They're hunting for a brain. Which is really crazy. But that's what it is. That's just what it is. Now, those people have no concept of reprogramming their mind. They barely know they have a mind. They just go with things. Whatever you tell them to do, that's what they're gonna do. It's so strange, so strange. But nonetheless, all of it, everything in the world out here is a show. There's nothing that can happen out here in this world that can affect you in here. That's the reason that you store up your treasures where rust and moth can't corrupt it. Because the treasures in your heart, you can get to them anytime you want. But there's nobody out here in the world that's going to get to them. Unless you give them away. It's kind of the same way that rights work, right? So God made you. He made you as a human being, a man, woman, whatever. And he said, beings that you're human, you're free. Later down the line, some people came along and said, hey, let's write down all the things that God meant by free. So they write out this Constitution, which is just a list. It's just a list. And so, if someone says, you can't say those things, you can't own a gun, you're not allowed to print that article, whatever it may be, these are really general examples. But if somebody tells you can't do those things, they're just flapping their fucking gums. You can't give those things away. You can. If you say, okay, please don't hurt me, I won't say that again, then yeah, you gave away something that you were allowed to do. And if you had not given it away, they wouldn't have took it. I don't know. I think sometimes people just need to have more faith in God. If you're doing right and someone comes and tries to do you wrong, do you think that you will be abandoned? Or what? I don't know. But that's it. This was just a fun talk. You have to slow down. When you receive information and the back of your mind is going to start talking to you. And it's going to start making all these associations that you're used to making when you get that information. Regardless of which sense the information comes through, you're still going to have programmed responses. You have to slow your mind down and only allow the positive responses. If every time that you smell crayons, you get sad, then you need to stop that. You have to be happy. Youth is the key. Youth, the young, the children, the inheritors of this world. And everybody who's running it for them right now is a real piece of shit. Real piece of shit. I got 5 kids. 5. things ain't looking so good for them. But damn it, we're going to make sure that they got a head start. Even if everybody else's kids are on their knees with their hands out in front of them, bowing to Nebuchadnezzar, my kids won't. But I guess that's a conversation for another day. Remember, slow down. You have to go slow. Relax. Breathe. But don't let programmed responses dictate your day. Peace out, guys. Love you all.